Has our summer of discontent reached its peak? There is a sense of unrest among Nuggets fans, but what could Denver reasonably do to allay those concerns? Sign LeBron James? Extend Peyton Watson? Trade everyone? Today, we're talking about where Denver fits into the grand scheme of the NBA in a transaction-packed offseason. Stay tuned. Welcome to What's in a Game. I'm Grace Jean here with my co-host, Will Jones. How are you doing today, Will?
Fine. We're getting some interesting news that kind of relates to the Nuggets, and we've been gone for a bit. Free agency was slow. We did our free agency special, and then we're kind of waiting around for anything else big to happen. We didn't have to do any emergency pods or anything, but it's good to be back. We'll talk about all this stuff that's been going on and not been going on.
Yeah, so last week we did our live show during the kind of first day of free agency, and nothing happened. And we said, hey, like if Denver does something big, as in anything, like anything that could reasonably change, like alter their starting lineup, signing LeBron James, trading a starter, extending Peyton Watson, those types of transactions, we'll come back, we'll do an emergency pod. And then nothing of that nature has actually happened yet, but we're going to talk about where some of the we're going to synthesize the very extensive rumor mill that's been happening around all of those possible moves. But it actually would have been nice if they'd done any one of those things, because even though Denver hasn't done anything big, we're going to talk about some of the smaller transactions that they've made. And also there's just been a long list of not like, I mean, we've had some pretty major moves that we'll talk about at the end of the show that other teams have made, but just like a really long list of, actually it's been a very active free agency slash just like general offseason stuff, because free agency is kind of mixed with like trades and you know, because they're signing trades and also just teams like trading players, like make room to sign free agents, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's actually been a very active offseason so far in terms of like, oh wow, some of these teams look completely different than they did 2 months ago, kind of thing. Denver, not so much. And there are also teams that haven't changed that much too. We're going to talk about like OKC is one of those teams that seems to be, for the most part, trying to keep everything together, even though they've let some other guys go. But yeah, we've got a ton of stuff to cover, including news that literally dropped like within the hour before the podcast that very much directly affects Denver. But before we jump into that, please do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Helps us out with the YouTube algorithm as we keep trying to grow the channel. All right, first piece of news we have to cover. This came in like literally within the hour. The NBA and the Clippers kind of announced that the Kawhi trade to Toronto will not be official until the league resolves the investigation into salary cap circumvention, potential salary cap circumvention, stemming from Kawhi's sponsorship deal with Aspiration that has been ongoing for almost a year now. Basically, ever since that investigation was made public, like Pablo Torre's investigation, sports journalist Pablo Torre's investigation was made public into what the hell is going on with this, alleged no-show contract between Kawhi and Aspiration, a company that the owner of the Clippers and also his deputy were heavily invested in, and so much has come out about the like deep ties to that Ballmer, the Clippers, and also Ballmer's deputy, whose name escapes me. He was also Ballmer's college roommate. We're also invested in. This was interesting news to drop right before, because it affects what the Clippers cap space situation is, what the Raptors cap space situation is, who is literally on both of those teams' rosters, because multiple players, Kawhi was supposed to go to the Raptors, and Brandon Ingram and Grady Dick were supposed to go to the Clippers along with picks. I just want to read a portion from the statement that the Clippers put out today, because I think it's relevant to where the direction of like a potential punishment might be going. If you'll recall, before I read this portion of the statement, if you'll recall, before the All-Star break, it seemed like the league was sort of trial ballooning. Like, what if our punishment was just on Kawhi and not the team? Like, what if we like voided his contract or something like that? And then he was like suspended for like X many games. And like they didn't actually put that out, but there was like leaked to outlets that like that was a potential direction that they were thinking about going if this, panned out. And this portion of the Clippers statement at least suggests that this could go a different way, which would make sense because I think it's crazy to just punish the player in this situation. All right. So the Clippers said, quote, on June 30th, we reached an agreement in principle to trade Kawhi Leonard to the Toronto Raptors. We have since been informed that the trade can only be finalized if the Raptors ownership group assumes the risk of penalties related to Kawhi's contract that could theoretically result from the ongoing investigation. The investigation is ongoing, and we expect the trade to be finalized following its conclusion. Obviously, the Clippers are the rest of the statement and even this final sentence here about expecting the trade to be able to be finalized was a show of kind of projecting like we did nothing wrong. We expect the investigation to show that we did nothing wrong, and for none of this to blow back on us at all. Now, the part of that subsection that I just read that really stood out to me was that the Raptors ownership group would have had to assume. So like this trade could have been final. Like they could have been like, yeah, like we'll take on whatever the risk is related to the penalties related to Kawhi's contract. When they say we've been informed, we've since been informed, like since they agreed to this trade. I don't think that was from the Raptors. It sounds like that was coming from the league. That, hey, there might be penalties associated with this whole dispute that come down on the team that holds Kawhi's contract.
Yeah.
And the Raptors don't want to assume the risk of whatever those penalties might be. It could be financial. It could be Kawhi missing games. It could be very reasonably Kawhi's contract being voided and then him not being allowed to sign with that team again. Like that would be an issue if you just gave up a bunch of players and draft assets to get him. And so I just thought that language was really notable.
I know the first indication that there might be a team side punishment to it. I mean, we haven't heard anything about this. And I thought since the trade even got, it was agreed to by the teams and then reported by a journalist. Yeah. And at the time when we were talking about it on the free agency special, I was like, well, the league didn't come out and stop it. Yeah. Like, well, it took a long time for them to come out and stop it because we're just getting news about it. I know Clippers think that they've done nothing wrong, but I don't know. It's just such a weird thing, especially now with the trade being involved. Like, if his contract's voided, is that cap space for the Clippers? I don't know. There's just so many questions, and I don't know why the Raptors would take on punishment. They should definitely be cautious and see what the
punishment actually is. Yeah. And you make a really good point there, because I wasn't thinking about that, how the league didn't stop the initial, like they're not going to stop like a preliminary trade, but maybe at the point when they're like, okay, time to make this official, they go to the league office and they're like, hey, just so you know, like there might be some penalties associated with the conclusion of this investigation, and whoever holds Kawhi's contract could be responsible for that. I think that is kind of like an interesting way to be like, okay, like it was kind of a bad look that this kind of went through and everybody was making the like Kawhi fleeing the country themes, even though they're not really relevant to NBA's jurisdiction. It
just makes them look so bad too. It takes forever.
Yeah.
Like, come on, hurry up.
It has taken a very long time. And now it's like you're holding up two different teams' business.
A lot.
I think it's be thorough, invest, like whatever, but it's been like 10 months now. since the investigation first started. I know they don't have like subpoena power, but it's kind of like all the parties involved are compelled to work with whoever the league hires to investigate this because they're part of the league. They're under the league's jurisdiction. So I don't know if there's been like slow walking with some of this stuff or what's actually going on to have made this like, I don't know like how deep this could possibly go for them to have not been able to conclude an investigation. Like, are they still in like the interviewing people portion, or yeah, there's
The Clippers said there was lots of interviews and documents were given and all that. So
yeah, man, the billable hours that Waxel Lipton's making off of this thing. Yeah, man, Adam Silver's power only works in the lower 48 states. That's not true. Like the Raptors are literally part of the NBA, so they are also subject to this stuff. Yeah, I think I think it was an interesting way for them to kind of assert like, okay, we got to kind of like wrangle this a little bit because we can't make it look like they're just kind of like acting as if nothing's wrong.
They have to say something. Like they can't just like let the trade go through and then say, "Oh, look, Kawhi's actually suspended a whole season." Not that that's what it's going to be, but like that would. I mean,
it could be that, right?
Yeah. I guess. I have no idea what it's going to be, but
I mean, it could include that on top of other penalties, which would be like, yeah. I don't know how. Besides, like the draft capital is like a thing, and like I don't know how. Like the Raptors, I think were like okay with Grady Dick, but I don't know how torn up the Raptors would be to be like, oh no, we had to get off of Brandon Ingram's contract for nothing. It's like,
I know somehow this is going to help these teams and not anyone else. I don't know.
I mean, like I don't like the Raptors, whatever, but I feel like it shouldn't matter who holds the contract. Like the team that committed the original salary cap circle. Like, okay, maybe because part of the penalty could be like the player's contract being voided and like suspension, like that would affect whoever that play, like whatever team the player's on. But that shouldn't be the whole punishment. If this investigation finds that there was there's enough evidence to say there was cap circumvention. Anyway, I thought that was a really interesting, like, big update that definitely impacts Denver for when it comes to Peyton Watson's potential restricted free agency suitors, because the Clippers are kind of the only game in town that Denver was like competing with, I guess. In this situation, it seems like they're kind of frozen right now. So I just kind of it's always possible that this investigation gets resolved.
Keep that investigation going.
The end of this, like before the end of the summer, and then the Clippers are like, "Oh, this is done." But they were also operating as if like this wasn't going to matter, and they were still kind of getting held up by the fact that they don't actually have that much cap space, and it would probably take a sign and trade to get Peyton to a deal that was like bigger than Denver would be willing to match, and like all of this stuff, which we're going to talk about when we get to the Peyton Watson segment. But that was like big news and immediately directly relevant to Denver, so we wanted to get that out quick. Next news item, a couple of updates on NBA expansion on two different continents. So the first one is that the NBA is apparently has a suitor for the Vegas team, a potential bid here. It seems like it's like a big kind of like pool of money. That's what all of these bids are going to be, is like a small group of people kind of pool together a slightly larger group of people's large amount of financial assets to say, hey, we want to own this NBA team. So this group is led by Jerry Colangelo and former NBA coach Vinny Del Negro. They are claiming that they've got $8 billion in total capital pooled to create the Las Vegas Jacks.
Oh, God.
Had you seen this before the show?
I didn't know that they introduced a name already.
So this is a potential name. it's still, in the state. Hopefully this is like a trial balloon that pops and they're like, okay, back to the drawing board on the name. But they also say they promise to build, quote, the most impressive state-of-the-art basketball arena in the world. I have no doubt that the Vegas team is going to have just like top-notch facilities because they're going to be high rollers, trying to make everything fancy in Las Vegas. But yeah, when I heard the name, I was like, guys, you gotta go back to the drawing board on this one.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Because you can't have the Aces and then the Jocks.
The Aces is so much better.
It's so much better.
So it's like you look like a fool.
And I'm not saying you have to one up the WNBA team, but like you don't want to sound lame by comparison. You know what I mean? Other expansion news. This is like on the topic of European expansion. The Deputy Commissioner Mark Tatum it seems like he's the one that's taking point on this European expansion, like NBA Europe league that is apparently going to be NBA and FIBA backed. So I don't actually completely understand like the structure of this here, but I thought this was an important quote that maybe elucidated some of that. He said, quote, "We have clear front runners in terms of bids for joining this new NBA European League. We have clear front runners in each of our 12 target cities, including many existing basketball and football clubs." I don't know, like football, they mean soccer. I assume those are soccer clubs that also have basketball teams associated with them. So I don't know why you would even differentiate that from maybe it's just like some pure basketball clubs. And then there's also some like football clubs that have basketball teams. This is a thing all throughout Europe. Well, it's like a sports club and they have like a basketball team, a rugby team. I know like Russia has a bunch of these where they have like a figure skating school, but they also have like gymnastics and like that kind of thing. So, but the part that I thought was interesting about that is that it kind of reminds me of how in Europe you have these with soccer, you've got these soccer clubs and they can participate in multiple leagues. So you've got the Premier League, and then you have the same team that can be in the whatever the bigger like European League. The Champions League. Thank you. Yeah. Champions League is that also UEFA? Is that Champions? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Will, for knowing literally anything about soccer. So it seems that's like an interesting an interesting kind of dynamic, because it seemed like when we were hearing about, they want to expand into Europe, this was going to be like, this is direct competition with EuroLeague, and like we're gonna maybe try to snuff them out. I don't know, maybe that's just like my very American centric, like we have like, it's very monopolistic here when it comes to our sports leagues at different levels. And often, even if you have like some competitor, they're just so much smaller that you don't even hear about them. Whereas like in Europe, at least with soccer, you have this structure where, there's like multiple leagues and like different clubs can participate in both if they so choose.
The only thing about this that I don't know really what's going to be, so I'll be open to it, I suppose. But could we, I guess this wouldn't work either because it's European, but if we created more leagues and could do some relegation in the NBA, that would be a big and actual sensible solution to tanking. But that's
we should be creating a new league here, or like just transforming the G League into the relegation zone for the NBA.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
That would be another solution to tanking for sure. Although, who knows? Maybe these new lottery reforms just solve it outright because nobody wants to be in the bottom of the lottery now. Any other thoughts on NBA European expansion?
No, let's go to
the big Nuggets. Denver news. So rumors abounded last week, as we talked about on the show, about how Nikola Jokic was reportedly not planning to sign an extension this summer. And he's been playing in the FIBA World Cup qualifiers in Switzerland this month, like for the last couple of weeks, I guess, between practices and whatever. And in one of, I think it was in a post game interview, they asked him about this, and this is a translation of his answer here, and he just said outright, "My idea is, well, this is rough translation. My idea is to sign next summer and stay in Denver for the rest of my life." And some people said like that's more like rest of career, but whatever. So we have confirmation that this is like, yep, it wasn't just like someone in Jokic's team saying this. It also doesn't seem like, to the point that I was trying to make last week, because it didn't really make sense if this was the motivation, that it doesn't seem like his motivation is necessarily to put pressure on the organization, because he's still reiterating this line of like, I want to sign in next summer and stay in Denver for the rest of my life. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't have the effect of putting pressure on the organization, because it absolutely does. Jokic was originally planning to sign his extension this summer, as of last summer, at least what he stated, and didn't. And it would have made sense to sign this summer because he could have signed a longer deal than last summer. And apparently he can sign a longer deal next summer if he goes in, and he can either opt in or opt out. I think he'll end up opting out of his player option because, and this is just speculation, this has not even been like leaked or like reported to be his motivation, but purely speculative, that if he waits until next summer, like it is true, he could get a no trade clause in his next contract, but we don't know that that's his motivation. There's no reporting that that's his motivation. This is everything about the potential no trade clause that he wants to add, which he can only get by signing a new contract. You can only get those after 10 years of service and under a brand new contract. Not like, it has to be a fresh one, not just an extension. But that's all speculation based on like what are the differences between this summer and next, besides just tacking on an extra year that he could probably get, frankly, anyway, later on in a contract. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I was hoping some of our Serbian native speakers would be in chat to give any impressions that they had on how he sounded when he said it, because just I don't speak Serbian, so I can't infer, the tone and all that. But it's interesting that he seems pretty committed to signing next summer, but I feel like that does add an extra year, technically, right? Because if he signed one now, yes, he could add on 4 years,
yeah,
including this one. But now we can finish this year out, and then he could sign a 5-year.
Yes.
So I like that, another year of Jokic that maybe we wouldn't have had, because everyone's expecting this is going to be his last like stint, whatever this extension lays out. So I would be very happy for that, and he'll make more money apparently. And I am a little bit worried about how it might affect, I'm not worried about the front office and how it affects them. Yes, they'll get questions about it all the time, and it'll be something hanging over their heads, and maybe they need that. Like, I'm not trying to feel bad for the front office, but I also want to feel like the organization has a clear future, at least with regards to the best player. I mean, there's tons of questions about the Nuggets' future, but
I don't. It's for me. It's not about feeling bad for the front office. And we've talked about this when it came to the idea of like, why doesn't Jokic put more pressure on the organization? We were talking about that as recently as like 2 months ago, right? And I sincerely don't think that like he's doing this to put pressure on the organization, but it's having that effect, obviously, because they don't have him locked in. But we've talked about how that actually can have a negative impact on the ability of the organization to put together a good roster around him. It's a little bit different in the situation that Denver is in, like as of this moment, compared to those like LeBron Cavs teams, because we're not talking about Denver operating with cap space and trying to get free agents to sign like long term. Like if Denver was trying to get like guys to come here on a minimum, like we know Jokic is here for next year, so like there's no question about that. And so it would the concern would be more about trying to get guys to come here that wanted to find a team for longer term. Victor Tunic says, hey, hello, I'm Serbian here. It is what was mentioned. He said what you reported. Plans to sign it next summer. He also said it's just business. All right. Great. I wish he would just come out and say, like, I want the no trade clause. Like, or like leak it like he did, frankly, the he's considering signing next summer. Because that would be like, okay, at least like just like last summer, we could be like, look, he could get more money if he waits till next year. And so I was not worried about it all year. I think even if he said, like, I'm just waiting for to try to get a no trade clause, which he wouldn't be able to get with another team, by the way. Like, you can only get that if you're 10 years with the same team. If he were to decide to change his mind and leave next.
After the Luka thing, like, might see why he wants that, you know?
Yeah.
Not that
so I just wish that would be, like, put out there so that even though I don't think it would allay all of my personal concerns, it would at least give me just something to be like, it's just this, guys. Because I don't want to have to deal with, like, everyone freaking out about, like, this team is trash. Jokic is leaving this summer. All year, you know,
it's gonna be happening. And not that they'll say he's trash, but they might be like, trade him or whatever.
No, he should
trash.
Leave. The team is trash.
Oh, the team is trash.
Saying the team is trash.
That will definitely happen.
Should leave so he doesn't waste the rest of his prime. It's like, guys, he's turning 31 this year, or he is 31. Is that right? He's the same age as
Pat. I think he's 31.
He is 31. Okay. Like, yes, but we're talking about like the tail end of his prime. Like, let's not like overblow this kind of. It's still gonna be really good, absolutely.
Best in the world, even.
Yes, I think even still arguably, mostly because everyone else that was kind of in that fight was like, we also sucked during the playoffs at points. On this note of him kind of getting asked about it all year, and probably got teammates being asked about it all summer, all season too. I don't love that either. Vyacheslav says he will not leave the org without picks. If he wants to leave, he would set it already and give the org something in return. That's the hope. The thing is, like, I think some of my my concern has been a little bit misread online, because it's not like I think that Jokic is going to leave for nothing next summer. But like, in terms of, like, if I was to put numbers on it, I would probably say, like, I don't know, because he's human, I'm not going to give him like 99%. I'll say like 95% he stays in Denver, 5% he leaves next summer. The problem is that 5% is so catastrophic that it has to be weighed accordingly when it comes to your concern. So if there ever becomes an inkling that Jokic might want to go somewhere else over the course, like, and this could happen for any reason. Like, he could just change his mind, and that would be like totally okay. Like, he's a human, he can change his mind. Like, his life priorities could change. That's why contracts exist. Like, we don't just do like, oh yeah, I trust you. And also you're not just, when you like agree to something with someone without, you know, putting it in writing, it's not just that you trust them, it's also that you're putting your trust in like the circumstances that could impact future decision making as well, right? That's why we put things in writing. And so the downside situation, which I do think is pretty low probability based on everything that Jokic is telling us, like, we're just gonna take him at his word, very low probability. But if it happens, it's really, really bad. Like, if Jokic leaves Denver for nothing,
Yeah, it's the worst thing that could
It's
happen to the
literally the
Nuggets.
worst possible thing that could happen to the organization, right? To the team.
But I do think, like Vyacheslav was saying, he would not want to just leave the organization and the fans high and
not
dry
saying that he would
too.
want to, but you don't know like what could happen.
Yeah. Yeah, this it just creates a little bit of uncertainty where when you signed an extension, you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
But
and I do
I'm
think
not that worried.
I think I'm going to be worried, and here's why. If this was, I hate to say it, but if this was like the Boston Celtics, they've had a rough like couple years since the title, but otherwise a team that is a perennial conference finalist. Like, you're always going to have like a solid team around you that's going to give you a chance to make the finals. Like, you're going to be in position for the most part. In the Eastern Conference, right? That's the other thing that needs to be considered here. I would be a lot less worried about like, oh, well, what if we have a bumpy year? It's like, well, no, like the organization, like we know the organization's going to be able to bounce back and like put like good pieces around, like if this was Jokic on the Celtics, for example, in the same position. Wouldn't be worried at all. Like they would not, Celtics fans would not be worried at all that he was just going to leave. Denver has had now 3 very rocky seasons in a row since the title. Haven't made a conference finals since, which by the way, the Celtics haven't made a conference finals since they won their title either. So that's just, but it's not like Denver was making the conference finals every single year, even before the title. That was only their second time there, for example. And so this contract situation kind of coupled with like another, like if they have another exit like they did this year, I think everybody who, it's kind of funny to have the people that like some of the same people. It's not total overlap, but some of the same people who are constantly saying this team is trash, Jokic needs to ask out, are also like, he's not going to leave Denver. I don't know why you're like doing. Right?
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's funny.
So it's not total overlap, but there are definitely at least a couple of people where I'm just like, wait, weren't you literally just telling me like 2 months ago, like he should ask,
he should look elsewhere,
play with Luka, you know? And we're gonna talk about why the Lakers are probably not a Jokic destination next year anyway, because they've used up all their cap space, and given a bunch of guys player options. But I wanted to put that in perspective because it's definitely important to know where Jokic's head is at with his extension. We already know where his head is at with regard to like what he thinks of like the roster and like whether the team had enough. He said it at the end of the season. He reiterated it again a couple of weeks ago about how like, yeah, we didn't have enough. And like, I think he was asked something about like, well, if you guys had been healthy, and he's like, well, I'm not going to say that because, no excuses kind of thing. Or no excuses kind of mindset. But yeah, it's just like, if this was literally any other superstar, I think people would be wetting their pants right now. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And it's,
and I think that as much as I like respect what Jokic has been trying to do in Denver, he said before, I think it was right after he signed his last supermax extension, like, I want to be like Tim Duncan and like do my whole career here and do like all of that. He's still human. Like, he's still a human being, and I don't want to like put him on some kind of pedestal either when it comes to just like human nature and like the emotions behind some of these decisions and like thoughts about legacy and all of that stuff, because that definitely comes to consideration for him too, even though he does and has so far largely behaved like very differently than other superstars. Like, it doesn't make him immune to those external influences either. or even internal influences, like how he wants to feel about his career at the end of the day. So don't dehumanize Jokic.
No, don't, for sure. But we're gonna shift into Nuggets, offseason stuff, and with the lack of moves that we've done, it does make me wonder what Jokic thinks, because he did have that quote at the end of our season, and John Wallace reflected that and was like, hey, the big man said we weren't close enough. And so that comes in loud and clear. And then it's like, I still don't know what the strategy is of the front office, although we can start guessing because of the moves they're not making.
Yes.
Which is fine. But yeah. Well, let's start talking about some of those moves.
Yeah, just a quick update on the Kawhi situation, because Shams came out with a quote from an NBA spokesperson while we were talking. This unnamed NBA spokesperson says, quote, "We don't have a specific timeline for the conclusion of the investigation, but expect the firm to finalize its work in the coming weeks."
Weeks away.
So they're like, okay, this is dragging on too long. Now everyone's mad at us, so we don't have a timeline for the conclusion, but we're kind of like, hey guys, could you hurry this along? Probably is how that conversation went. All right, let's jump into some of the Nuggets free agent signings next over this last week. So we were not going to do an emergency pod for any of these moves that Denver made. Let's start with the one where they get rid of a player, actually. So Jonas Valanciunas was waived yesterday. That was the deadline for his partially guaranteed deal to become fully guaranteed. It was originally going to be a $10 million contract. Denver, that was going to be non-guaranteed. Denver decided to partially guarantee $2 million of it in exchange for Val pushing back the deadline of the full guarantee. We talked about this when Denver first made the move last fall. I said, look, if they're doing this, it means they're not going to be nickel and diming, because if you're nickel and diming, you're not going to partially guarantee any of this, but you might want to use his salary in trade. So you want to put yourself in better position to have those. So you push back the partial guarantee date. Maybe something materializes in that extra week. It didn't in this case. So Denver ends up waiving him. Vyacheslav says, huge hope, big disappointment. I actually want to quote a tweet here from Harrison Wind over at DNVR, because I thought he made just a very measured point about Valanciunas this summer. Says the Nuggets were only outscored by 2.9 points per 100, so they were minus 2.9 net with Jokic off the court last season. Statistically, it was the best bench since 2021. Tim Hardaway Jr. and Jonas Valanciunas were two important members of that group, and now they're both gone. That's absolutely true, but Val was, part of that. I think that when people look back on the Val year, the expectations were too high, clearly, because they think it was a disaster. And I'm like, no, the Nuggets were almost net neutral with Jokic off the floor last year. And that was, that was part, obviously with the month that he had with out with his injury, but also just in games where he played, the bench kind of carried, even in a lot of games that we lost in that kind of month when Jokic came back. It was not really himself. And while I don't think it was a disaster, I also think we always knew that it was just going to be a 1 year thing, especially after the whole how last summer went. It was like, okay, you just give us the 1 year and then you can go back to Europe. Hopefully he goes back to Europe. It would be really lame if he ends up signing a minimum with the Knicks.
Yeah, the Knicks are apparently in the hunt for him after losing Mitchell.
Yeah, so those are my thoughts on the Valanciunas thing. I thought he was fine last year, and I know not friend of the show, but really cool guy, and maybe we want to try to get him on the podcast at some point. Jake Shapiro, Nuggets beat writer.
Oh, I was just gonna say that. Yeah,
kind of had
He
a
was
mini
mad.
freak out over the Nuggets waiving Val is like it's a clear cost cutting. It's like it is a cost cutting move, but also like we knew that this was going to happen last summer, even before we knew this would be like necessarily a summer of cost cutting.
Yeah,
And I think that there
man.
are basketball reasons for this move as well as like personal reasons for it as well.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. I said I liked having Val in Denver. It was fun in the regular season, although the regular season wasn't that fun because of injuries. But I was enjoying having
Yeah.
someone who was adept on the offensive end and that position. Just I
Yeah.
hadn't seen that in a while.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect to see someone like Jake be so upset about the move, but I guess it was someone had to do it, so that's fair to feel that way. But it was a lose-lose kind of situation for Val. It was kind of like a shot at maybe getting this championship. Things didn't align, and it was either he was going to play so good that another team would offer him more and we weren't going to go down that route, or it's going exactly like it just went. So, which was like he was pretty good, couldn't really play him in the playoffs, and I think that was more of an archetype style of play and like the way the team needs to move, and his type of player archetype at that position isn't really what the Nuggets are looking for. And so I think that's why they got Bagley, who we can talk about.
Yeah. So on a related note, the Nuggets did sign Marvin Bagley. Was that their first free agent move of the offseason?
I
So
mean,
this came. I
maybe.
think this was the one where I was like, I think I tweeted something like the Nuggets saw the discontent over the lack of moves and went here, damn, like just take it. This came like pretty late at night, I think, on the second day of free agency. 1 year deal, very likely a minimum. Can't imagine that it is anything else at this point because that would end up hard capping Denver at the second apron, which they don't want to do if they want to be able to retain Peyton Watson. I think this is a great move. I think getting Marvin Bagley, who actually had a pretty solid year between Washington and Dallas, two tanking teams to be fair. But he's shown kind of steady improvement over the last couple of seasons. Getting him on a minimum where frankly the backup center market is very inflated right now. Or inflated relative to where it was. I'm not saying that these guys don't deserve what they're making, but most backup centers are making $9 million a year minimum. And we'll get to that when we talk about some of the moves that other teams have made. But getting a backup center, I mean, Val made $10 million last year. Like that's kind of like the 9 to 13. The range for backup center is anywhere from I think I saw one for like 7. That's like not totally washed anyway. From like 7 million to like Mitchell Robinson is probably going to be on the high end of that, making around MLE money next year. So like 16, almost 16 million, which Denver obviously can't afford. So getting somebody who is in his prime, and has shown the ability to, or at least the potential to, not be terrible at backup center things, has some athletic pop to him, as well as some offensive skill. It'll be interesting to see how he fits in defensively with what Denver's trying to do. But then again, it's like, I mean, it can't get any worse than it was with Val defensively last season. So I just think this is like a solid move for Denver.
Yeah.
And I was happy that they were able to get him because I wanted them to try to get him last year. I think he was on.
We brought him up at times.
Yeah.
I think we brought him up even this offseason, maybe. I can't remember, but yeah, I think it's a good move. I was more excited about him playing like the forward and like a backup 4 than backup 5. But a lot of people were instantly going to the backup 5, and I was like, yeah,
it's not very switchable, but maybe that doesn't matter. Like Denver's defense is so bad. I literally don't care about like having sort of traditional positional like positional skills, except the point of attack stuff. Like that absolutely just needs to improve. But it, like, when it comes to the kind of 3 through 5, it can't get much worse than it has been. So I'm kind of open to kind of
But
doing some different things archetype wise.
I do like that there's the option to play him in different spots. Whereas Val's just like a true like 5, you know, he's not going to be a power forward. I think there's times where Bagley can still do it. But I think he can play like CT was saying with Duran.
Yeah.
And things like that. So I hope we see that. And while Duran isn't like the fastest person in the world, obviously these guys are more athletic in theory. And Bagley just fits more of that athletic moving center who can maybe do some things and be athletic and rebound and get up and down the court. And Val's just a little more stiff, but he had great touch. And I don't think Bagley's like offensive game is as developed as Val, but this could offer something the Nuggets don't have. So I just think it makes sense from that perspective. I get that Val was a good player, but it's just not the right type of player.
Yeah, and I mean, we were begging last year to like, can we just see a little bit more double big? We might see more double big this season with Marvin Bagley and Jokic just because he's a little bit more athletic. Like, I don't know what the impediment was mentally for DA to want to experiment with that. Honestly, because like those minutes weren't actually even that bad when it was Val and Jokic. Defensively compared to like what it was with just one of them on the floor. So I don't know. Maybe this is what it would take. I hope we see some of that because we have so many freaking front court players now that we don't know if they can play, and hopefully they can play with Jokic because there are so many of them. All right. The next free agent.
One last thing I wanted to say about him, though, was like we talked last week about how great it is for players to come into Denver and kind of rehab value. And so this is like one of those situations where I think he could really like, you know, make some money off playing with Jokic.
I mean, how often does a front court player come to Denver to rehab?
That's the question. Yeah, not a lot. And I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if it'll work or not, but I have hope for Bagley, and I'm excited to see it. It's not like a splashy signing, but it's like the kind of signings I was waiting to see the Nuggets do and kind of rebuild the margins around the most expensive players. So we just need a little bit more. But next guy.
So next signing that Denver made was Tyus Jones. 1 year deal, very likely a minimum again for all the previously stated reasons. A lot of people were very disappointed in this, and I was just here to say I thought this would be the first signing because I fully expected them to want to bring Tyus Jones back because DA really likes him. My question right now when it comes to Denver's guard room is whether Tyus is going to end up being the backup point guard or the like 2.5 string point guard. Because we only have two like real guards on the roster right now between Tyus and Jamal. And the other thing with like this particular signing is like, no, regardless of how you feel about Tyus, like the free agent point guard market is incredibly thin this year. And I don't think that Tyus is anywhere near like the bottom of the available players. He's just definitely near the top. He just is because of how thin it is. And I said near. Gaiman says, get me Westbrook or Bryn. Now we can't get Bron. Okay, we're going to talk about the LeBron stuff. But I just highly doubt that Westbrook is going to be coming back to Denver. I think that they're just kind of done with each other at this point. Between the not the players, but like between the organization and West and Russ.
Yeah.
That's just like the reality of the situation. So some of the other guys that are still on the market, and I saw someone ask like why we haven't signed Aaron Holiday yet. And I think Ryan was actually talking about this on Locked On Nuggets the other day, how Aaron Holiday might be a good like defensive point guard option. I would be kind of mad on that signing because Aaron Holiday is just not really bringing anything offensively to the table, and the defense is just think it's like mostly theoretical. There's some guys in the league that are just like, okay, like you see a positive wingspan and you assume good defender or like any kind of like impact defender. And I don't necessarily see it. But if you just needed like a body that wasn't like too old, that could kind of do some stuff like bring the ball up the floor, sure. But I kind of feel like you need somebody that is better than Tyus at something. So that's actually why I think that Gabe Vincent would be a more interesting other signing. I just don't know if he'd want to come here if like Tyus is also here, and it's just like,
Yeah,
he's not like that much better at like, I think he's a better defender, like very clearly a better defender. But the offensive stuff is like, could be on par one night, but like very often you'd expect him to be way worse than Tyus. Other than that, Jaylen Pickett's still out there, but I think because they declined his team option, they are not planning on bringing him back, which is interesting.
I think they're like satisfied with Tyus's ability to handle the ball and pass, and they're just hoping that's going to carry over to enough of a degree to be sustainable.
Sure. But I think you just need one more guy.
Yeah.
Like you just
like he's not going to be the answer if we solved our ball handling issues.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I continue to think that they're going to be heavily scouting guards at Summer League to try and find somebody to bring in. Jameer Young is available.
Or they just want another position to be a ball handler.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I wanted.
Yeah, I agree with that. Slow-mo unfortunately takes a minimum from the Raptors, which we're going to talk about, but I was like, that would be perfect. But unfortunately, our front court is kind of still like freaking crowded now. But I'm just like, why don't you want to come to Denver? You go to Minnesota, you go to all the way to the north, you go to the northernmost team in Toronto to not come to Denver. It's like, okay, we get it. We get the message, Kyle Anderson. All right, let's move on let's talk about LeBron, because I think this is the kind of central. I think the LeBron story is central to Denver's offseason, whether they get him or not, or whether they're already out of the running or not, which we're going to talk about. So this segment is titled How LeBron James Has Already Shaped Denver's Offseason. The number one thing, and we got reports of this over the last few days, that from I think this was from Jake Fisher and Mark Stein over at the Stein line, were saying that's like, oh, other teams are saying that Denver is actually not under the financial constraints that teams previously expected Denver to be operating under. And there were other leaks coming out of Denver that's like, oh no, ownership has not placed any financial constraints on the front office. So like any reports of financial constraints from the front office are greatly exaggerated. And I read those and I thought, this was just straight up not true 2 weeks ago. Otherwise you would have come out and said this 2 weeks ago. And obviously the reason that they're saying this now, I don't know if it's true now or will remain true for the remainder of the summer, but the reason that they're saying this now is because LeBron James became available to the market, and at least initially, and we'll talk about whether this, continues to be the case, at least initially listed Denver as one of the teams that is under at least serious consideration, as in, oh, you brought up the whiteboard. Okay, this is amazing. So if anybody has missed the discourse over the last week, so Rich Paul has a podcast. He's had a podcast, went on this podcast with Max Kellerman and displayed the LeBron free agency whiteboard, listing out some of the major players on different rosters of teams that LeBron is considering signing. This includes, as highlighted here by Will's lovely red ovals, the Sixers, the Cavs, the Wolves, the Nuggets, and that was another Mitchell. Oh, there's two Mitchells. There's Mitchell in Miami. I thought that was funny that Davion Mitchell made the whiteboard. There's Miami and the Cavs because there's Donovan Mitchell and Davion Mitchell. Along with there's also some other teams listed here: Dallas, the Knicks, Steph plus Dre. Like the Warriors are not actually listed as like one of the kind of core teams, and I don't know. I don't think that actually means anything because there are some teams that are in the middle that I'm just like, I don't think he's going here, and I'll talk about that. The Spurs are listed, and they've already kind of leaked out that they're not in the LeBron sweepstakes, so that's another one. As well as, yes, Brad and Tatum. It's funny, Brad Stevens makes the board. That's what I'm saying, man.
Not
like
Jaylen Brown,
people know what's going on there. It's funny because I think this board, and maybe the episode was recorded probably before the or no, it must have been after the Jaylen Brown trade, which we're going to talk about.
With the Sixers,
he is listed with the Sixers, yeah. Which is interesting. But anyway, Denver's on the board. They've got Jamal, Cam, AG, and Jokic listed as like kind of core players that are over there as like potential draws. And Rich Paul goes through the theater of like this team. Max Kellerman asks him like, is he really considering Denver? And Rich Paul's like, they wouldn't be on the board if not. And so everyone like freaked out, like, oh my gosh, we're really in the sweepstakes. I'm like, all right, guys, let's just like everybody calm down. But also, as like for me, a connoisseur of drama and like petty drama, I just had to like give like round of applause to Rich Paul for this display here. Having the whiteboard, you can see the pointer. He's actually pointing at either the Spurs or at the Cavs players in this frame that was taken for the screenshot while he's explaining like here are all the options that we've laid out for consideration this offseason. Just very funny stuff. Also of note, Josh Kroenke is in. It's interesting. I said Josh Kroenke, but it just says Kroenke in parentheses. I don't know what that means. Is it Stan? Is it Josh? Is it both?
I think it should be Josh because apparently they're friends.
Well, but Kroenke is Stan Kroenke is also the owner, and I know there were other reports. I think not reports, but I think Rich Paul said maybe in the same podcast episode he referenced like, well, you've got this like very winning organization in Kroenke Sports Entertainment, and he was listing off like, well, they've won titles with like the Nuggets and the Rams and Arsenal, so it could be one or both Kroenkes there, as well as the friendship with Josh Kroenke. I thought this was very funny and very dramatic, and if my team wasn't having the kind of angsty. Or my fandom wasn't having the kind of angsty summer that it was having, I would just be sitting back with my popcorn.
Yeah.
At all of this.
Like when
there's a lot of showmanship here.
The free agency, like the start of free agency, LeBron had just announced that he was not going to play in the Lakers and was gauging interest around the league. And I mean, I think we all thought Denver would be a potential option because we have need to bring someone in with LeBron's skill set, of course, like especially if he's going to be cheap and take a discount because the Nuggets are strapped for cash. But then it ended up being like the Denver was actually in this tiny group of teams he's considering, and I don't know how much actual legitimate consideration he's giving to it or not. I don't know how much of it is the show. I don't know how much of it is selling the LeBron sweepstakes and like creating intrigue and all that. Like, I don't really know for certain, but I definitely would have taken LeBron in Denver. And yeah, we're going to talk about like the fit and all that and how realistic it is. But I just funny, like going from this is interesting that LeBron's not going to be on the Lakers to then I was actively considering him joining us in free agency and in the offseason, and it potentially like saving the offseason because he could be like a cheap, pretty talented player to bring in if we're just gonna like.
Oh, is LeBron James pretty talented?
Yeah.
Yeah. Will trying to contain his his fandom. Yeah, so obviously Denver is like suddenly like projecting like, oh yeah, money doesn't matter because they want to stay in the LeBron sweepstakes. And obviously the best way to self-eliminate there would be to like cheap out before you have any idea where LeBron is actually seriously considering, if he's actually seriously considering anywhere but Cleveland, which we'll talk a little bit about why I think that that might be not the best idea for him. No, you should keep the board up while we talk about this. The other thing about Denver's offseason that's related to this is that they haven't just shed salary. Part of those same reports from Mark Stein were that Denver has quote rebuffed offers for Cam Johnson in particular, who it makes sense that that's the one that's been reported out as being someone that's garnered interest. AG also did earlier on, but Cam Johnson was just like the easiest one to move in terms of like the size of the salary, for example. I thought that was a funny report because it was also previously reported that when Denver was in preliminary trade talks for Jaylen Brown, those talks were centered around Cam Johnson and AG. So it's like, oh, we rebuffed the trade offers, but not in the Jaylen Brown talks. Obviously, those reports were probably coming from teams that had called that weren't necessarily offering like a player of Jaylen Brown's caliber in return. Right. All right. I love this board. I love the jersey swaps you were able to acquire there. Not gonna lie, like the ones it's maybe it's literally just because he's already been in them and they're not swaps.
The Heat and the Cleveland.
The Heat and the Cavs ones look the best. Like he looks the least weird in the Heat and the Cavs ones. And probably like if I'm being honest, like the Cavs one looks the best in terms of just the pure jersey swap of the five there. It would be weird to see him in like I think at this point like a Warriors jersey, for example, even though I think and despite them not being in this kind of center here, I do think that they're one of the teams that's in the finals. All right. So I'm going to go on my little, I'm going to go on a little rant here that I'm going to try to bring you into it because I have so many thoughts on this. Number one, LeBron is probably not coming to Denver. I had written in my notes, LeBron's not coming to Denver, but never say never. Unless you're me, I say never a lot, but he should. Now this is not official. And there have been lots of reports over the last few days from Shams, Brett Siegel, Nick Friedel, and aggregates of those so-called reports, right, about Denver being out, officially out of the running. I went and read and listened to every single one of them. They were either Rich Paul or not Rich Paul, just Shams, Brett Siegel, or Nick Friedel, who's a Warriors beat reporter. They were all a mixture of that person's own analysis and hunches based on speculation that they've gotten from other teams about which teams are in the running. And none of them were like Denver's out. They were just like, these are the teams that I think he's seriously considering. Based on what I've heard from other teams that are speculating about which teams. So it's like this big game of telephone. And I was skeptical about every single one of the lists because every single one included Philadelphia. And most included Minnesota. Maybe the only two places that are in the running that were on that whiteboard that I'm even more certain LeBron is not going to than Denver. And I'm pretty pessimistic about Denver's chances. And maybe this is just me being a pure hater. And I won't even say this about Minnesota. But if LeBron goes to Philadelphia, I will eat a sock on stream. I just do not think that is going to happen. Okay. You guys can bookmark that. Clip it and bookmark it. If LeBron goes to Philly, I'll eat a sock on stream. If I may speculate here, I think that the front runners include Cleveland for the story. We know that he's going to be filming this documentary all next season. Probably very likely his retirement tour next year if he's doing this whole documentary, because otherwise it's what are you going to do, a documentary about your second to last season? That'd be weird, right? I also think Golden State is in there because there's where there's smoke, there's fire. We know that they were very interested in him 2 deadlines ago. And there's also been reports that Rich Paul like wants the Warriors to trade for AD and that LeBron's very interested in playing with AD again. Even though we know the Wizards have said AD is not available. We're not trying to trade him right now. But if the Warriors gave them like a Godfather offer for AD, it would be bad business to do that. But think of it as trading for LeBron and AD. And then it feels a little bit different to give up those picks for Anthony Davis than it does if it's just for AD, right? Who knows if that actually even ensures that LeBron would sign there, or is it potentially a situation that I speculate might be going on a little bit with Peyton Watson, where it's like, hey, LeBron might come here, so you better sign this restricted free agent, or like you better like help out this other clutch client, basically, because AD is also a clutch client. Help AD escape from Washington, or give Peyton Watson the big long-term deal that he wants. But if LeBron isn't just BSing, and this is a huge if, right? Like, I think everybody in the chat absolutely is well within their rights to agree with me that this is largely a formality, that he has a very strong idea of where he wants to go next, that it's likely Cleveland. I still think Miami is still in the listing as like a dark horse because they're another team that he's been to before. He's already done 2 stints in Cleveland. And like Miami's that mix of like the story of like going back plus the champion, like the ability to really compete for a championship. He'll be in the East. He'll have Giannis. He'll have Bam. Like their defense would probably like he won't. The offense will be like highly questionable, but the defense might be incredible. But if LeBron is not just BSing, if he's actually seriously contemplating more than like maybe 2 options here, I haven't seen any convincing reports that would take Denver out of that theoretical running. And Denver leaked as recently as a few days ago that they are operating as if they are still in that running. And this is a quote from Sam Amick over at The Athletic. He said, team sources say they truly believe they're still in it, though they also admit they're as in the dark about what might happen next as everyone else, or close to it anyway, in terms of being in the dark. So it's like nobody knows. I will say one set of people that probably aren't in the dark are LeBron's potential future teammates in Cleveland who were probably golfing with him this weekend based on their Instagram stories, all being at the same golf course this weekend. But we know that LeBron has been hanging out in Cleveland. And if you wanted to cope about this, you could say, well, he's just there playing golf. Like, of course, the Cavs guys are going to try to go with him and try to like pitch him on the team, that kind of thing. And I'm like, where are the Nuggets pitching LeBron on Denver? Can we like, okay, next minimum signing is Bruce Brown, and we send him out to be like, LeBron, come to Denver, come stay in your Cherry Creek home, and I'll take you out to the good golf courses.
I was talking about the Cronkies needing to get Peyton Manning to call him and talk about how like he's stayed in Denver ever since playing on the Broncos and how involved he is and how awesome Colorado is in Denver and all that. Because he like came here for his last stint. Obviously, LeBron wouldn't come for 4 years like Peyton did, but he would be a good ambassador. And LeBron like respects great sports people like him, you know?
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, our chief culture officer should be pulling out all the stops. There should be no in the dark. Like maybe you don't know about the process, but you're like, I'm going to illuminate the hell out of this thing and like put everything out there. Because you need to save your off season, apparently. High Wisdom says we should trade for Nasri. Trade what? Like, sure. Now I want to talk a little bit about why I think Denver is actually the best basketball destination for LeBron, or at least no worse than Golden State would be with AD. I do think that Golden State is worse without AD because it means they have a sidelined Jimmy Butler for at least most of the season, if not the entire season, because he of course tore his ACL in January of this year. So Rich Paul laid out some of the criteria that they're looking at for LeBron's next destination. Okay. Now, 2 of these are very bad for Denver, and 2 of them are excellent for Denver. These are not necessarily my criteria for best basketball fit, but I want to talk first about how Denver fits into whatever their stated criteria are, especially in comparison to some of the other teams under consideration. Number 1, defensive ratings. Denver in the toilet for that one. Like, so bad over the last 2 seasons. Just and there is no argument that bringing LeBron in would improve the defense. Just not. There just isn't. Because the problems are largely at the point of attack. And related to that was the second criteria listed here, which is on ball and help defense. Again, hasn't been great. The thing with Denver's roster is very interesting. I still think that they need help with the on ball defense, but if you were just looking at the roster and didn't know anything about how the last couple seasons went, you'd be like, oh, it's not a bad wing room here. You've got Peyton Watson, you've got Christian Brown, Cam Johnson had a pretty good defensive season. And you've got some optionality there. Obviously, you've also got Aaron Gordon. So if you weren't looking at the numbers, which they absolutely are, as I stated, those the first criteria is defensive ratings. It's really bad for Denver, right?
Yeah, that's when I figured, we're probably going to be out if that's what he cares about. We haven't done anything to fix that yet, so.
Well, we've got Trevin Brazil.
Yeah.
And like I do think that like the Val to Bagley switch, not that Bagley is like good defensively, but they can try to do some different things defensively. I also think that the defense just immediately improves if you take off even more of the offensive load from Jokic, and then he can actually and he can commit himself defensively to the defensive end of the floor.
It's a possibility, yeah.
Last 2 criteria, though. These are really good for Denver. Offensive schemes. Now, I don't actually know what exactly they mean by that, because does that just mean like what your base offense is, how often the ball is in the hands of like the best player, the second best player, etc., how often they run pick and roll versus kind of playing more like high post, triangle offense, etc., etc. I think Denver's offensive schemes are great for LeBron. I'll talk a little bit about it when I get to my criteria, but like the overall idea is he could have the ball in his hands as much or as little as he wants on this team. Just genuinely, because we have so many players that excel off ball. But we have enough players that play well on the ball that he does not have to be the guy on the offense, at least even as just an initiator. Obviously, Jokic is here, but even like as perimeter creators, you've got Jamal, you've got AG as a supplemental, and even Cam Johnson to a degree, and Peyton Watson, depending on what his role would be. And obviously, if LeBron signed here, like Peyton Watson would be like, yo, like, can we get that extension signed or what? There would be no like holding up or trying to like hold out for the rest of the summer thing. Because like Peyton Watson wants to play with LeBron James. Like, what are we talking about here,
so.
right?
I would hope if that would happen. Yeah.
And the last criterion here that was stated by Rich Paul is coaches and team success rate on ATOs. Denver consistently ranks as one of the top, if not the top team in terms of efficiency on after timeout plays. And I think that's such an interesting, very specific criterion for Rich Paul to lay out, because it's, I wonder if it's that LeBron cares that much about ATOs, or if that is sort of a proxy for LeBron and his evaluation of like the ability of a coach to kind of think on their feet, and or at least like put the opponent in like a compromising situation. I think it's probably a mix of both. Like he cares about AT because he talks so much about ATOs on his podcast, but I also think that it's a proxy for like the things that he happens to value in a coach, which is X's and O's.
Yeah, maybe he wants to go to a team that has a bad rating out of timeouts because he wants to be the one to draw up the ATOs.
I doubt it.
And the good teams that he goes to, he's gonna have no control.
He's like, I could draw them. I can fix that.
But it's funny because this thing with the ATOs was like the only good David Adelman thing. Like people were low on David Adelman, but people were like his after timeouts, is really good.
Well, that's not even just a DA thing. Like that was true. I mean, he was the offensive coordinator under Malone too, so you could give him credit for that too. But Denver's kind of consistently a really good ATO team. We could be even better with LeBron potentially though. Yeah, so some of my thoughts here, though, on why I think the overall basketball fit is so good for LeBron. I already talked about how he could be on ball as much or as little as he wants here. I just think when it comes to LeBron, Denver is the team that would use all of his offensive tools, that not only could, but would use all of his offensive tools without overtaxing him. So LeBron is this incredibly versatile offensive player and he's become more versatile over the course of his career. His 3-point shot has gotten better. He's become adept at playing off the ball, really good screener, cutter. He can play out of the post. He can be a hub, like when Jokic is off the floor. He can initiate from the perimeter. Obviously, like, maybe not necessarily at that like tippy top peak necessarily anymore, but at some point in his career and for flashes of certain games can be one of the best drivers in NBA history, right? Great transition player. Denver would utilize every bit of that. He would not be pigeonholed here in Denver's offense, right?
Especially because they need just that other creator.
An on-ball creator, not at the guard position, exactly what you wanted, right? And because like in comparison to some of the other teams that, okay, let's say that if he was legitimately choosing Philly, like, is he gonna shoot more than Jaylen Brown and Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey? You can't realistically see that. Whereas like without like somebody getting upset. Whereas like here, like LeBron can shoot as much as he wants, right? Because you've got Jokic who doesn't like to shoot. You've got Jamal who's used to shooting less because he's not the best player on the team. You've got all of these other guys that can shoot as little as like 5 shots a game to like 15 shots a game, depending on like just what's going on with the opponent that night, frankly with Jokic that night. Sometimes that can dictate how many times you shoot as an ancillary player. But I just think that Denver is the team that LeBron can scale up or down as much as he wants. Golden State would be a lot more dependent on him being on ball, I think, than any. And that's another reason that I think that Denver is actually a better basketball fit than Golden State, particularly if they don't have AD. I think they need AD to make that case. I think the Cavs are just weird because of you've got James Harden, who still hasn't signed an extension there yet because like that was kind of put on hold with this whole LeBron news.
And the word that he's not a fan of Harden.
Do we know that?
I don't know that that's confirmed, but people were. I can't remember where that came out, but that people were talking about how one of the reasons he wouldn't go there is because he's not a Harden fan.
I don't know if he's not a Harden fan, but I would be skeptical if I were him of a team where he's got to share usage with James Harden and Donovan Mitchell. It's just kind of an awkward fit offensively. I think he would immediately become probably the best playmaker. James Harden's pretty good, but he's got like he's a little bit more regimented in his reads than LeBron is on that team, and I think that they could simultaneously end up overtaxing him because of how much they need his playmaking, while also underutilizing him as a scorer because of just like because of the way that Harden and Mitchell play, right? He would be almost exclusively off ball there. While maybe like he should be on ball more because he's like the best playmaker on that team, which I think is interesting. I think it's interesting that they're the front runners there. I kind of wonder, like, would Cleveland actually re-sign Harden if they signed LeBron? Because I almost think the fit is just better.
It would be nice to get a like. Could they do a sign-in trade thing with him?
No, because the Lakers have renounced LeBron's cap hold, so they don't have his bird rights anymore. They can't pay him more than a minimum to do the sign-in trade. So it would just be.
Could they do a sign-in trade with another team though, and then LeBron signed through free agency? I don't know.
I mean, it'd have to be a team that had cap space. So like the Nets, maybe. Do the Nets want Harden?
Hey, it was.
I mean, maybe. I don't know what the Nets want. So who knows?
Yeah.
My question though on LeBron, and this is maybe like the part with Denver that is probably the most murky of all the teams. Although I think of all the strong like real contenders for LeBron might have the same question, which is where does LeBron actually fit into the rotation on this team? And even compared to other teams where you're like, I don't know if he's an every night starter necessarily on like every team that he's considering. I think that Denver would absolutely want him to start. Are you playing him alongside Aaron Gordon and just moving one of them to the 3? That could get kind of weird defensively, but also like Denver was 21st in defense last year. So who cares, right? And you can always like adjust your rotations to kind of split them up a little bit more if that becomes like an issue where they're both starting but not necessarily playing like all their minutes together. But how do you see it in your ideal world if LeBron comes here and everybody's back? Because I do think that it's probably ideal that everybody's back, right? If they get LeBron.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of wondering if that would mean that Cam would then be traded if LeBron came here, because then
for like
LeBron
bench
could basically
players?
and then LeBron could play technically the 3, I guess. So it'd be like Gordon, LeBron, Jokic, CB.
And there is the question.
Jamal.
I think Matt Moore brought this up on Locked On Nuggets that of like somebody, if LeBron's going to start, somebody's got to go to the bench. I mean, I think it should be Christian, but then it's kind of like, I don't know. Let's go jumbo. The Rockets play jumbo. Let's just go jumbo. Let's play Cam at shooting guard. We've got LeBron at small forward.
Oh yeah.
And Christian and Peyton off the bench.
I'd do that too. Is there 1 year of
the
LeBron,
point of attack is like so
CB.
sketchy, but you're so big, like it might not matter, you know? 3 is his real position, maybe like a few years ago, Jaylen, but like those feet don't move like they used to.
Yeah. I also just like, I do think he has a lot on offense that the Nuggets need, and obviously he's not as much of a defender, and so I think he's obviously looking at defensive rating because defense has been trending in the league. Of course, like teams that have been able to defend are having much more success and struggling without it. And with the Nuggets specifically, we've been talking about whatever aspect of athleticism you want, like speed, toughness, vertical spacing, whatever it is, like size. I kind of worry that, like, I would take LeBron on a minimum, like just get out of the way, but he would be relied on to fill in these athleticism gaps, but he's like pretty old.
Yeah.
Obviously. And I don't think he should be like the top guy to be bringing like all that to the team when we're already struggling with it. He probably doesn't want to be doing that either.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. That's
like one concern.
That's a totally fair concern, because all of our athleticism is basic, like high level athleticism is kind of coming off the bench, and this is assuming a healthy year from AG.
Yeah. But that's the other great thing about it is if AG's like hurt again, which I really hope doesn't happen. At least you have LeBron, like it's a good fill-in, though he can't defend like AG ideally could defend.
Right.
And I don't know that he can still do that.
It would actually be kind of interesting to see what it looks like when you have just an offensive 4 and then 3 defenders playing with like with like Jokic and LeBron. That could be like another interesting look.
Mhm.
I don't think that he's going to Minnesota either. Like, this man does not want to play with LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball would drive
Yeah,
him
I'm like, come on, are
crazy.
you
At
kidding
like
me?
playing with LaMelo Ball at the end of your
LeVar
career is
Ball.
like,
I mean, I guess he did get the ball experience in LA right before that
with
first season.
Lonzo.
With Lonzo, yeah.
Yeah,
They didn't
but
make the
that's a
playoffs.
different player. That is a
Yeah.
different player
Yeah.
completely than LaMelo. Um, and we're going to talk about it, but the Wolves locker room has gotten considerably younger of late, for better or
Which could be
worse.
a good thing.
Yeah, for better or worse. Um, but yeah, the Cam Johnson question is interesting because if you can trade Cam for rotation players and just send him to a team where he would be able to like consistently start, especially because he's in a contract year, going to be entering a contract year now, probably seeking an extension. Thing is, I would just hate to give up the playmaking. Like Cam is a good connected passer, and I hate to give up aggregate playmaking in that situation. But it would also clear a path for Peyton Watson to come in, be that he could start, he could be that athletic kind of spark more so in the starting lineup if he wanted that kind of role.
Yeah, I mean,
with LeBron in there
we're gonna,
too.
We're gonna talk about Pwat and everything in a second, but just with the Nuggets not making any kind of big splashy trades and waiting for LeBron and seeming that they want to bring back Jamal and everybody, and I don't know if that means Cam too. Like, I don't hate it, and I know a lot of Nuggets fans hate the idea of not changing anything, but I do think Cam would be even better next season after having a whole season under his belt, and he does add a lot. He can play some defense more than a lot of the guys on our team. If we ended up keeping Cam, I wouldn't hate it either, but I don't know what that would mean. Like, would that mean that we don't get Pwat? And there's ramifications to that, but I don't hate the idea of keeping Cam because I do think he's going to be good next season for us if we do. But like you said, probably the likeliest to be traded. Once the LeBron domino falls, I wonder
if they would stop rebuffing offers for Cam.
Yeah.
But I do think that it would change the nature of what Denver is looking for sure, which is like not just pure salary dump anymore. Like they would want players back because you can't just give up a starter and not get at least some rotation players in return.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Denver's the best basketball fit for LeBron. I think that the team that actually makes the best like secondary case, like I said, is Miami. In large part because of this because of the defensive stuff. It's funny they said offensive schemes and not defensive schemes. But with defense, they were just like defensive rating and on ball / help defense, just like not necessarily schematic things.
He trusts Spo.
Yep.
Giannis is LeBron loves his bigs to play with. Giannis is crazy good, obviously. I mean, I as like a competitor and like wanting the Nuggets to win, of course, hate the idea of LeBron in Miami the most because I do think it would be really good. Whereas like Golden State, I wouldn't be like worried about it, but I would have fun with it. Yeah, but it's not in the conference.
That's true. Like the ones that are the suitors that are in conference are probably the
I don't really
like the weakest, like the serious suitors because like Minnesota's there, but like let's be real.
But I'm like but they do have a lot of like holes to fill for sure too.
I was just thinking like they made the coaching change. I feel like Malone would be like really recruiting right now. And I don't think DA is like making calls or even has the like ability to like make calls to try to convince LeBron to come here. But we know Malone has that background with LeBron. Yeah. So that would have been nice. But again, I don't think he's going to come to Denver. I think it's probably going to be Cleveland or Miami. Maybe Golden State. Those are still the three I think are like the front runners. But if our chief culture officer can get it done, that would be incredible. It just would be. All right, let's get to Peyton Watson next, an update on his RFA situation, which changed dramatically just a couple hours ago with this news about the Clippers Kawhi deal. So honestly, everything is kind of effed because of this Kawhi situation for the Clippers. And the reason that matters is that the Clippers were the primary and maybe only suitor kind of openly trying to get Peyton this summer. And it was a combination of maybe they were going to be able to clear enough cap space um, to tender an offer to Peyton, but obviously Denver would have the ability to match. So they would be able to clear enough cap space to give an offer, but maybe not necessarily enough to give an offer that Denver wouldn't match. And part of the problem with that is that the Clippers want to keep Benedict Mathurin, who is their RFA right now. They've tendered a qualifying offer to him. If they renounced his cap hold and like let him free, they would be able to open up enough cap space to force Denver's hand and to not just be able to match. I think they'd be able to offer him something over $30 million a year. Or at least they'd be able to offer him over $30 million for like the next year. And maybe it would be declining after that. But they don't want to do that because they want to keep Mathurin and they need to keep his cap hold in order to pay him like the money to be able to keep him. There is even obviously less cap space now because of the Toronto trade. I think because they were going to be able to shed some salary in the Kawhi deal, and now they can't do it. It's just like a small amount, but those margins matter when you're trying to create a competitive offer. And so it kind of leaves the Clippers in a situation where their only opportunity, and this was again before the Kawhi situation turned like kind of dashed the finalization of this trade to Toronto, is to come up with a sign and trade offer that would do basically what the Lakers did with Walker Kessler and do a combination of like we're paying the RFA what they want and offering the Denver in this case draft picks or whatever else, basically compensation. Like we're gonna pay you to not match this offer. We're gonna pay you draft picks. We're gonna pay you maybe a good player or two to not match this. But it becomes a lot more complicated now because of this Kawhi situation and just like the limbo that it puts them in. And so it honestly, like maybe the biggest loser before there's an actual verdict in this case is Peyton Watson, because he now is in a situation where at least publicly does not have another suitor in RFA besides the Clippers in Denver, or if maybe not the Clippers anymore. We don't know how they're going to pivot in response to this information about the Kawhi news, because it kind of, just puts a lot of things on hold for their roster. I'm just gonna see now, just like quick math. They, in not being able to do the Kawhi trade, they lose about $3 million in cap space. So that kind of puts them at around $20 million in cap space, which is, I mean, Denver would match that, right? Yeah. I mean, they would match 23 even if that was like all they were able to open up, which is why I was like, that's why the even before this Kawhi news, we were kind of like, I don't know how they're going to try to force Denver's hand here besides like execute a sign and trade. We'll take Peyton and we'll give you like draft picks. Part of the problem here is if Denver has to agree to the sign and trade. And even if they agreed to take like Derek Jones Jr. and picks back and Peyton goes to the Clippers and they pay him whatever it is he wants. If Denver takes any player, like any salary back in a sign and trade, they get hard capped at the second apron. Mm-hmm. So they couldn't actually take back that much salary, if any, right now, because they still have to meet their minimum roster requirements. So they have to have enough apron space to pay out the vet minimums to the rest of the guys that are going to fill out the roster. So I think Peyton just has to sign with Denver or take the qualifying offer, because just because the Clippers offer something doesn't mean Denver has to take it, right? For in a sign and trade kind of situation. Let me just look and see if Denver didn't have Peyton's cap hold. Okay, they've tendered the qualifying offer, which is like $6 million, and they've waived Val. Like that $2 million that they partially guaranteed is going to play into this too. 22 million with 9 players signed. They have to sign 5 more players. If they were all minimums, that's a little about over like maybe like 12 million. And if they take a player back in a sign and trade, okay, so they could probably stay under the second apron if they just took back like Derek Jones Jr. But then the Clippers would have to include draft picks on top of that, obviously, so that Denver to like get Denver to not just match whatever.
You just couldn't go into you'd be capped. You couldn't go over, but
you
we
would
wouldn't
not
be.
Right.
If we took back.
No. If you take back a player, you're capped at the second apron. If you take back a player in a sign and trade, you're capped at the second apron. If you're taking back the player that's being signed, like if you're the Clippers, if they take back Peyton in a sign and trade, they get hard capped at the first apron. Yeah. So those fun apron rules, guys. Those fun apron rules.
Because they wouldn't want to do a sign and trade at all because it would cap them. Especially like if they wanted a player, wouldn't they just let him walk because they wouldn't want to do that. They wouldn't want to like trigger that. Like they just be like, that's an offer we're not going to match. You just walk. We're not going to do a sign and trade because we don't want to be, triggering any of these apron bullshit that they want to avoid.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't. So they don't have to. Like they would have to create a favorable situation for us, both salary wise and picks. Maybe they find a third team to take on.
It's just hard for me to imagine like anything.
We'll do a sign and trade, but you have to take Zeke Nashi too. I mean, that would clear out some of the front court. Also, 2 birds, 1 stone. Actually, man, we only have 8 players signed, so that's another like 2.5 million. They'd have to. It gets close, but they could do it. Let me see. I might be under the wrong impression about what Derek Jones Jr. makes. I thought it was around like 9 million. It's like 10 million. Okay, that's tough. I don't know if they could do that unless the Clippers took back like Zeke or something.
I
that
just
would
like
actually
I'm trying to
be funny if that's how all of this ended.
I mean, Nuggets fans would go crazy losing Pwat, but if you lose him
picks and Zeke off the books,
and you get off Zeke picks, and
Derek Jones Jr.
And
what about one pick? And it's like a good pick, not like a best pick, not like 2033, but let's say like 2031, first round pick, Derek Jones Jr. and they take Zeke. I don't even know if the Clippers can do that salary rise because they're hard capped at the first apron. I don't know if they can take back that much salary, to be honest. Even if like that's assuming they would even do anything right now, given that they're effectively frozen by not knowing what's going to go on down with this Kawhi situation. Like they don't know what their punishment is going to be. They think they're not going to get a punishment, to be fair, but yeah. It's interesting.
What are the dates that this could, because they said it's going to maybe resolve in the coming weeks. How long does this
they don't
free
have
agency
dates
process go?
No, I mean, dates? Free agency goes until
it's a long time
until people get signed, like until opening night. You know, it could go
so that will
like well
definitely
into training
become
camp.
resolved. It's not like it's gonna go super long, so
Sure.
they'll have an answer to what it is eventually.
Yeah, and we just have to sit here and wait. Unless Denver is able to just be like, look, let's just get you some certainty here. Let's not drag this on all summer. Although Denver just like they like to drag these things on all summer, right? We had AG didn't sign his extension until training camp. Like he was being asked about it in on media day. Christian didn't sign his extension until like what the day before opening night, or like a couple days before opening night. Zeke Naji didn't sign his extension until a couple days before opening night. Jamal Murray, his got signed. He was probably the earliest one, and that was like September, I think, when that deal eventually got done. It was definitely like well in advance of training camp, but it was deep into the summer.
Yeah.
So Denver, for some reason, feels very comfortable dragging these things out, even with players that they definitely want to keep. And it kind of irks me because of what that means for their summer training, how they take their summer training, and what it means for. I mean, every single time there's like an injury riddled season, like immediately that follows. Or just like a bad one in the case of,
or just down year or something.
Yeah. But I don't know if they've made that connection mentally yet. I don't know if anybody is saying that. So that's kind of annoying. But that's the situation that we're in with Peyton Watson's RFA right now. Denver still has all the leverage, pretty much all the leverage. I will say that leverage starts to decrease the closer you get to training camp and the closer you get to the possibility of Peyton taking the qualifying offer, because that's when Denver's leverage goes away. Is he takes the qualifying offer, has a de facto no trade clause, and then you're just kind of like playing out the season with an unhappy player who wants to go somewhere else.
Yeah, you're going to lose him. He might even do some like Rich Paul BS to not play a lot.
Which is like not necessarily what you want to do when you're an unproven player that's trying to enter
He's trying to be
agency.
Like, I had that one great month last season and I'm never going to play again.
Never going to play again.
Just so people keep thinking that's where I'm at.
Yeah. And this is the reason that I'm kind of, this and the LeBron thing is the reason I'm just kind of getting annoyed with all the takes about like, why hasn't Denver done anything yet? It's because like there are big dominoes that have yet to fall that could very much determine what Denver needs to do next. And they don't want to pigeonhole themselves by doing anything right now that would take any of these big dominoes off the board, whether it's extending Peyton, trading Peyton, signing LeBron, not signing LeBron. Right. And this is just the way it is. That is the way it is.
Yeah.
Now, look, the other thing, and I don't even remember if I talked about this on the show last week. We're going to talk about just a few, because I don't think we can go through literally every single rotation move that has been made through free agency, but there's some interesting trends. Other teams are signing like big free agents or making big trades, especially to acquire rotation players. The Lakers, we're going to talk about them using all of their cap space to like get guys. Denver is not a team that has a bunch of cap space because they're not a team that is like devoid of rotation players. Like we have players, right? So the question is like, do you want to trade them? And a lot of people are like, yes, trade them. Okay, trade them for what? Trade them for value? Trade them for negative value? Trade them for players? Trade them for picks? Are those deals even being offered? Are those deals even on the table yet? Right now, the only players that have been at least rumored to have had either interest or offers made for them are Cam and AG, right? We got reports that Jamal was not like made available during the Jaylen Brown talks. We also got reports that Boston wasn't interested in Jamal. So like believe like whichever side you want on that. Maybe both. It's like, well, he wasn't made available because Boston didn't ask about him. It's like, okay, whatever. Yeah, so Denver is not in any rush right now, and I commend them for not just like making some rash move to make a move. Because if they'd done something before the draft that resulted in like, well, this is negative value, slightly negative value, but they were able to shed salary and maybe get some theoretical like future flexibility or whatever. But it could have been something that immediately took them out of the running for the LeBron sweepstakes, which I don't think they're going to quote unquote win anyway. But it's at least given some people some hope for a few days, you know? Um, and they can always reevaluate this stuff later. Like a lot of people are talking about the lack of urgency, and I see it right now. I'm currently at least like every day that passes that they haven't made like some big move is another day that passes that they haven't made some catastrophic move. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying do nothing. I'm saying they need to go about this in a targeted way. Do you want to try to make a Godfather offer with, Denver's version of a Godfather offer because they don't have a lot of like picks or whatever? Do you want to try to make a Godfather offer for Franz Wagner at some point and go like aggressively at somebody that you definitely want instead of just making change for change's sake? You know? I keep going back to that Franz example because I'm just kind of obsessed with Franz playing with Jokic. But I think that people need to keep that in mind when they're just like sitting here like jonesing for Denver to do literally anything this offseason.
Yeah.
Because you could end up in a situation where you've traded Jaylen Brown for Paul George, right? Because it was just like time for a change and to save some money, which we're going to talk about. Okay.
Oh God, that whole thing's annoying me. But
yeah, those are my overall thoughts.
I mean, a lot of the discourse right now is how bad Denver's financial situation is. I mean, it's already almost in the second apron.
And we talked about this on the show. We're like, look, their tax bill is going to be real big if they keep everybody. It just is. It's going to be almost $200 million in just the luxury tax bill because they're repeaters.
Yeah, so people took that as a good sign that they won't run it back because there's a huge expensive reason not to do that. But they're not doing anything to show that they are willing to change. That doesn't mean they won't. There's still dominoes to fall, like you said. But it's hard to imagine how they address things otherwise. But I mean, you could still make some trades. You could trade AG, you could trade Cam, like we'll see what they do. Could those be catastrophic trades? I mean, after we'd kind of gone through a lot of the trades around Jamal and AG, it did kind of look like hard to imagine winning a trade in that regard. So I totally see why a move with those players involved could definitely be a catastrophic kind of move. But you don't want to be afraid and just like be complacent and then we're in the same boat and we have no depth, we have no defense. I mean, like Val left, Tim Hardaway left, now we got Bagley and Tyus Jones. I think Bagley can provide some things that Val didn't. I don't think Tyus is going to bring the impact that Tim Hardaway made just purely off of his shooting. But I don't know. It's
Tyus is not the Tim replacement. Like,
no. So I don't know. Like, there's still a lot of questions, and it's going to be a while. This long off season has continued to be long and not provide answers.
Embrace the uncertainty, Will. All right, let's talk about some of the notable moves that have happened in the last week. We've already alluded to one of these. Jaylen Brown was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers for Paul George, along with I believe it was 2 first-round picks, along with 2 swaps. They're not great picks, guys. These are not like 2033s. These are like 2028s. They might have been 2 2028 picks, like a 2027 and 2028. And I'm like, yeesh. It's been an interesting saga, but we learned a little bit more about what was going down last week. We kind of speculated like, oh, is Portland, like, was the Jaw trade like a precursor to a Jaylen Brown deal? Because now they have too many guards and they're definitely going to trade for like a wing, right? And they've been in the Blazers. The Blazers have been in the Jaylen Brown kind of rumors for a while. Turns out Jaylen Brown was going around telling teams, I'm not going to extend with you, so don't trade for me. Did that to Milwaukee, did that to Portland. I don't know who else potentially, but that could explain part of why this deal was so bad for Boston. They basically had no leverage. I think it's funny to be like, there's no way I'm moving to Portland, and then like you get sent to Philadelphia. It's like, okay, whatever. To each his own. I love the West Coast, so like I'm quite biased in this sense, and I'm from the East Coast, but definitely not the Northeast. Like that's a whole different animal. Okay. Um Being like, no, I'm not gonna move to Milwaukee, I get. All right, Milwaukee, I get. But like Portland, like what's wrong with Portland? And then the 70, maybe he would have called the Sixers, but didn't think that Boston was seriously considering trading with them. And then Brad Stevens calls Philly, and they're like, "Yes, we'll take him for this." And then he's like, "Okay, do it before you change your mind." Let's get this one done. But I think that explains at least part of why the trade value was so low. Probably a large part of why, because you just constrained the market, and also basically to just teams. It seems like maybe not Portland, because they weren't going to give him the supermax, like the extension on his current supermax contract that he wanted. We know Portland is kind of being like cheaping out right now in other aspects of the organization. We don't know what they're going to do yet with players, but you know, that's a sign of perhaps what's to come.
I just want to know if you thought this was some like really smart, savvy move by Brad Stevens to get off a really expensive player.
No,
and it's like prepping his team.
It was very, wow, very underwhelming. Perhaps the most underwhelming thing that Brad Stevens has ever done.
Okay, and that
includes,
I was
like,
ready to
draft. Like he's
him.
consistently had to draft at like 29th and 30th in the draft, and still been able to find like guys that turn out to be able to play. This I don't. So here's the thing, though, is I don't think either team like lost the trade necessarily. Probably you would say, if it like gun to my head, I would say Philly won this trade because Jaylen Brown is a better player than Paul George at this stage in his career, more healthy player. I don't know how the fit's gonna be. I'm not saying it'll be bad, but it's kind of one of those, like with the LaMelo to Minnesota trade. It's just like I kind of just need to see it to see like what that actually looks like with Jaylen, Maxey, and Embiid. We're gonna probably won't even get to this move, but the Sixers also signed Dean Wade. So I think they're kind of putting a little bit more emphasis on like just more physicality in the forward spot. Although like Dean Wade, I don't know if I'd call him like a physical forward, but he's a forward, and they just didn't have those guys, and now they have one, and like kind of two. Even though Jaylen's not like a power forward, he's a small forward, but he plays very physical, shooting guard, small forward. But no, I don't think it was an incredibly savvy move. Like honestly, in my mind, in my like Brad Stevens can kind of do no wrong, and it pisses me off because I hate the Celtics. Dreamland, I thought they were going to trade Jaylen Brown for like Trey Murphy and picks. And that didn't end up happening, which I would imagine Jaylen Brown called the Pelicans and was like, do not trade for me. Because if you're calling Portland, you're definitely calling New Orleans and being like, no, you know? But I think that was kind of where I was thinking. But it does explain, again, like a lot of why that market was so constrained that they were only able to get what they got in this deal. The other reason I think Philly won this trade is like, I think Paul George actually has one fewer year on his contract, but he's just so much older and way more injury prone at this point. Like you literally don't know what you're going to get. What I will say is, in terms of just like on court winning, just like winning games, while I do think the Celtics are going to miss Jaylen's rim pressure because they don't have literally anybody that pressures the rim from the perimeter anymore. They've got actual bigs now, which I think is good because they haven't really been prioritizing that center spot at all for the last few years. At least having like true centers, not just stretch five. So now they do. They've got Mitchell and they extended Kata, Mitchell Robinson, that is. Where did this thought start? On losing Jaylen's rim pressure. I think Paul George actually fits into Missoula ball quite well if he's going to be healthy. And so I actually don't think that this will result in like meaningfully fewer wins in like at least a regular season context for Boston, because they're just kind of like this like ridiculous juggernaut that just keeps pushing, and pushing is just like shooting threes and winning games. Shooting threes, containing at the from the perimeter. You can even argue that like again, like the health is the main problem, but you could even argue that Paul George is like a better on aggregate just because of consistency, more consistent defender than Jaylen is right now. The other thing you're going to lose is just pure usage. No, and that's a compliment to Paul George more so than it is like a dig at Jaylen, because I don't think Jaylen's a bad defender. I just think his defense is overrated. Whereas I think Paul George, when he's healthy, is actually a really good defender. But it's like, how often is he healthy? So I think there's a lot of interesting like basketball reasons for this trade, but ultimately you can't say that Boston won this trade, and so that's why I'm probably pretty disappointed in Brad, but I'm happy as hell that Boston didn't get better.
Yeah, same.
Or that didn't get better in terms of like their overall asset stock. I just don't think they got significantly worse, even though Jaylen is a better player than Paul George. Like I concede that very readily.
It is wild to go from possibly trading in for Giannis, maybe even Jamal Murray. You can put a number of good players that they were considering, and they ended up with Paul George. Nobody saw breaking up the Jays as resulting in that, but it was a tough situation. It was a disgruntled player, so I guess they felt like they had to do something a little drastic. So
yeah. Okay, next big move. Donovan Mitchell signed a 4-year, $273 million supermax extension. I don't really have any thoughts on this one outside of like, obviously Donovan Mitchell is a better player than Trae Young, which is why he's going to get paid more better money than Trae Young, 35% max as opposed to Trae's 30% max. But like Cleveland offered this with no hesitation. There was no like, hey, could like we get this down to like somewhere between the 30% max and the 35% max? Like, nope, we're still playing these top tier players and like the second tier of players below them as much money as we're legally allowed to under the CBA, because these guys don't grow on trees. You know? And honestly, every time a guard gets one of these contracts, Jamal's contract looks better and better. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, true. People were really reacting to the amount of that and just like marveling at how much money these players in the NBA are going to be making. But
lots
that's
and
just
lots
how
of
it
money.
is.
I think Jokic's next deal is set to, I think Adam Barras was citing this, that Jokic's next deal is set to put his lifetime earnings at over $700 million. Yeah.
Yeah. So with like sponsorships and all that, like could it get to $1 billion?
I think that's just salary.
No one will know, but
yeah. With sponsorships and everything. I don't know how much he's getting in sponsorships in Serbia.
I mean,
I don't know if he's making $300 million in sponsorships in Serbia. I could be wrong, but
well, who knows?
Yeah.
He's gonna. That's just a lot of horses for him.
It is a lot of horses. We already talked about the Celtics signing Mitchell Robinson. That was kind of an interesting move to see that they are valuing that center spot again. I'm not terribly surprised, because Brad Stevens was pretty transparent at their exit interviews that they needed to shore up that front court, and they did. But we got to get to the Lakers, because this was a team that finally did stuff in free agency, basically right after we signed off on our stream, where they used up all of their cap space, took themselves out of the Peyton Watson running, which I was happy about. And we alluded to this earlier in the show, but this was their first big move, was a sign and trade for Walker Kessler. So they signed him for 4 years, $130 million, or Utah signed him and then traded him to the Lakers. In exchange, the Lakers gave up the 2031 and 2033 first round picks, as well as swaps in 2028 and 2030. The 2028 swap, I don't think is going to mean much, because I don't know if Utah is going to be better than the Lakers in 2028 or 2030. They might not be worth anything. But it was effectively payment to Utah to not match, because Walker Kessler was, of course, a restricted free agent for the Utah Jazz. And the Lakers were in such dire need of a starting center that they were like, we have to get this guy. If we're going to make this offer, we have to make it a sign and trade. We have to offer them enough money that they decide that they're going to just trade him to us. Right. And so this is the deal that kind of made put people on the like, let's sign and trade Peyton train. But, as I discussed with the salary situation, it might not be that easy to do it if you're taking back any kind of salary. Just because of that hard cap that it puts you at in the second apron if you're taking back any players. In this case, Utah didn't take back anything except picks. So they're not hard capped at anything. Not that it would matter. I don't think they're spending that much money on their roster. Yeah. But I don't know. The Angels keep stacking picks. I will say these picks are more valuable now than ever, because if you're getting first round picks from a team that could be anywhere from mid to bad, that's great because they're going to have
odds are getting better.
Expanded lottery odds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Jazz could end up being the Thunder in like 10 years.
The Jazz?
Yeah.
I mean, they were one of the picks that was like the teams that was like on par with OKC in terms of like the draft picks they've had over the last few years. They just haven't hit.
Yeah, true. They're gonna try again though here. So.
Yeah, and it's not even like Atlanta or Brooklyn where it's like we got top picks in like kind of dud draft classes, or like for Brooklyn it's like we keep getting like the 5th pick instead of like a top pick. It's like, I mean, OKC doesn't always get like top picks. I mean, they didn't even when they were tanking, but they just draft really well in that like 10 to 15 range, or like the 8 to 15 range. And they did again this year with Ademara, but it was also a really good draft. They kind of couldn't go wrong this year. Other notable signings for the Lakers: Sandri Mamukelashvili, Nuggets killer, 4 years, $52 million contract. So again, kind of a backup big situation. And he's going to be making roughly 12.5 million maybe dollars per year. Is that 13 million a year. All of the guys the Lakers signed, by the way, had player options except Kevon Looney. So Walker Kessler, Sandri Mamukelashvili, and Quentin Grimes, all on 4-year deals with player options. So this is, again, like they are taking themselves out of the running for Jokic next season as well, because they use it's not just like 2-year deals with like team options on the second year and they can clear up cap space. They're gone. So that's also something to look forward to in the future as you kind of project forward. Like I said, Quentin Grimes, 4 years, $60 million. He was reportedly seeking like a $30 million average annual value salary deal last summer. But honestly, in terms of like where I thought his value like would be if his like team came down to like a reasonable number last year, I don't think this deal is that bad. I think he probably could have gotten a little bit more than this if he'd just kind of gotten like come closer to like reasonable with Philly last year. But 4 years, $60 million is not that far off. Like I thought his value was like slightly above MLE. So something closer to like a little bit more than what Nickeil Alexander-Walker got last summer. But obviously on a longer deal because he's younger. But a 4-year deal, $60 million with a player option for a player that like took a big risk by going with playing on the qualifying offer. I don't think there was a ton of upside there compared to what, like I said, Philly would have been willing to offer him. I think this is probably right in the neighborhood of like where Philly was starting their negotiations last summer. But it's good that it didn't result in like the catastrophic downside. So I see this one as like a soft landing situation for Quentin Grimes, not like a win for taking the qualifying offer.
Yeah, but where do you see the Lakers now? Not convinced.
So we won't get to these, but they lost Luke Kennard, they lost Marcus Smart, and they lost Jackson Hayes in free agency. Or lost. They let these guys go. I don't understand Marcus Smart. The other thing I didn't include here, I don't know how I missed this one, was they also signed Colin Sexton from
what?
Yeah.
Very.
Did you miss that one?
I didn't even
Because
remember that.
yeah, they signed it was not in my bookmarks for some reason. I just remembered because that's who I was I was like, Colin Sexton? You paid 2 years 19 million, but you weren't willing to pay Marcus Smart the 2 years 13 million that he got from the Rockets when it's like more of a position of
A
need for
need
you,
you
like you
want,
an
yeah.
offensive guard versus like a defensive wing next to Luca. And Luca and Austin Reeves, like I don't really understand the thinking there. Um
Yeah,
I
people
don't
are kind
know,
of
like,
saying that's going to be a.
I think they're better because 'cause they've got a real starting center, but they also got rid of DeAndre Ayton, they traded him to the Wizards. Or did they waive him? I think they traded him to the Wizards. Um,
Reusing Luke is going to be expensive.
I don't think they're, like, that much worse, but I don't think they're better.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, like I don't think they're going to drop off and be like in the
Yeah.
lottery and all
Like,
that.
these aren't
But like,
bad
I'm not worried
signings, it's
about
just
them.
kind of like, I'm curious what the defense looks like. I
Yeah,
think they're gonna put a
it's not
lot
going to be
on
great.
Walker Kessler.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like
I
he'll
think
be
they
fine like on
underestimated
offense
how
with
important
Luca,
like
but
Marcus Smart was huge for them defensively last year.
mm-hmm.
Huge. Like I don't think that they are a top 6 team in the West if they hadn't signed Marcus Smart on a minimum last year or on the biannual
Mm.
exception.
Yeah, he really did better than I thought he would for them because I wasn't sure what
Yeah.
to think of him, but he was like that hustler player and making an impact, especially when they don't have a lot of people like that to be physical and just like be a bruiser, which people have been wanting on the Nuggets. That's why some people were like Smart for the Nuggets. Look into that.
Yeah. So that's how I feel about the Lakers right now. We already talked about Dean Wade going to the 76ers. They have a forward. Um Okay, this is important for Peyton. So, check in on a couple of other restricted free agents. I didn't even have Jaylen Duren on here, but the Walker Kessler getting signed by the Lakers, like as soon as was humanly possible, thing really kind of screwed Jaylen Duren because there's really no market for him to get a max deal. That's the other thing is like the Lakers. I don't think we're trying to pay a center $50 million a year, which is reportedly like Jaylen Duren's trying to get a max. Um, they were able to get Kessler on around 32.5 million dollars a year on that deal. And if the Lakers had offered that to Duren in an offer sheet, Detroit would have gladly signed that immediately because Jaylen Duren is seeking $50 million, and I don't think that money is going to be out there for him. I don't think that's going to be out there for him next summer either, to be honest. Um, So that's tough. Like I kind of don't. Okay. This plays into what I was kind of trying to say all season. Like everyone's citing like okay, and then he kind of had this big drop off a cliff in the playoffs in terms of his production and impact. But all season I was saying like guys, like he's a really good player. Had a really massive leap, especially defensively this season. But I think that him getting to the All-Star game as a reserve, frankly, I think another player or two got snubbed in the Eastern Conference to put him there. Or at least it was like very debatable. Like he could have easily like not been on the All-Star team. And then getting on the third team All NBA, largely because of the injury rules again, despite like a great defensive season, like I think he absolutely deserved a spot on all defense. But I think that those two kind of accolades perhaps gave like him and like let's say his team a bit of an inflated sense of what the market would actually be or should be for a player that provides what he provides. High level defense if he keeps this up because we've had like 1 year of this basically. Pistons were also really good defensively last year, but this was the year that it was like, whoa, Jaylen Duren is like a big contributor to this. Um, and then offensively, like, okay, like, I don't know if this actually translates to a playoff setting, but you deliver some production, and it's difficult because you're on a team where it's like somebody's going to give that production because it's literally just you and Cade. Like, who else is going to put the ball in the basket kind of thing. So of course you're getting those numbers. And I'm not saying they're empty stats. I'm just saying like they're stats on a bad offense, even though it's a good team. Right. So that I think he's in a really tough spot, but with like what he wants versus what Detroit's willing to pay him, and frankly, what other teams are willing to pay him. Tari Eason, my favorite Peyton Watson RFA comp because they've had similar careers, just kind of like stilted on off. There's trade-offs here where Tari is like more consistently good when he is healthy, but hasn't been as healthy. Peyton has now had kind of a Tari Watson health kind of season where he, came in like fits and starts and then wasn't available for large chunks because of this now becoming like a recurrent hamstring thing.
Kind of worried about that.
He did get extended by the Houston Rockets, 5 years, $81.5 million fully guaranteed. I actually haven't looked to see what the average annual is on that. Just like quick. So it looks like he's going to be making less than 10% of the salary cap. He's going to be making $14 million this upcoming season, so less than the MLE. And I'm just kind of looking at that and thinking like, what is the argument for Payton to make significantly more than Tari Eason? Besides like 1 month in January where he had stats very similar to a past January that Jonathan Kuminga had, who is still on the free agent market right now. We don't know what he's going to get, but he's not even going to get what Tari Eason made just based on the money that the cap space that's available out there. We kind of know that. And so go ahead.
Yeah, like I get Peyton wants more money than CB and he wants as much money as possible, but I just really don't, besides them just hyping him up and it being clutch and all that, I just don't see the reason that he would get the money he's looking for. Because he hasn't even played a full NBA season.
Well, because Denver always overpays, that's why. But
I guess so.
Yeah. And I think this is a totally, honestly, like based on his career, I thought they were gonna squeeze him for less than Jabari Smith Jr. got, but this is like right on par. It's maybe like a little bit. Oh no, this is like way less because I'm 81.5 divided by 5, not 4. Yeah. Man, the Rockets are running a tight ship over there with these books. I am really jealous of their cap management.
Yeah.
And maybe that's like an unfair comparison, even like for Peyton's sake, because the Rockets like have consistent where I'm like, whoa, like Şengün took like less than a max in a year that he was like a fringe all-star, like less than a rookie scale max in a year where he was a fringe all-star for that deal. And they got Jabari Smith Jr., who was number 2, second overall pick or third overall pick in the draft, and had like flash like all kinds of offensive skill. Obviously, on like those were some bad Rockets teams, and he's kind of like settled more into like a role where he's like a swing between like the bench and starter unit forward, and he's making like less than Christian Brown. And that was knowable at the time that they gave Christian his contract. I'm just saying. And what else have the Rockets got going on? I mean, they just signed Marcus Smart for like $6 million a year after he had like a great kind of bounce back season.
Some good signings. Good numbers.
And Kevin Durant is... Oh, Tari actually got a player option on the last year of that deal. So maybe that's how they got him to accept it. But even still, you're like 4 straight years of making less than the MLE. And then you got a player option the last year. Like, yeah, you can re-enter free agency like early. But I mean, I would have done that. Like, if I were him, I probably would have done like a 4-year deal instead of a 5-year deal with the player option so that you could re-enter free agency when you are 26, 27, 28. Like he's gonna re-entering free agency at 29 years old, not like 20. Like you want to be like closer to those like younger prime years when you do that. I'm kind of like, damn, does the Rockets just know like which agents to work with? Yeah, so that's tough. I wonder what Amon Thompson is going to get on his next extension. Really curious about what he's actually extension eligible this summer. Does he wait it out to try to make? I mean, he's not going to make All NBA, probably, unless he makes like a massive leap, right? Because like offensively, it's just hasn't been there. That could be really interesting to watch this summer. But yeah, that was just like a quick check-in. Oh, we actually had an RFA who changed teams because an offer sheet was tendered and their home team did not match. Quentin Post was offered a 3-year, $30 million deal from the Memphis Grizzlies, and the Warriors decided not to match. Someone was talking about like, oh, the Memphis included a couple of these like $1 million, $2 million like incentives here and there in like that first year. I don't think that's why the Warriors didn't match. I think they just didn't want to pay Quentin Post $10 million. I think they liked him a lot on a minimum and didn't want to pay him. But this also continues the trend of like teams are paying bigs. Like there's a market out there for a big, whether you're starting big or a backup big. And they're like, we got to have these guys. But that's the first instance I can recall since I've been following the NBA as closely as I do right now of a
like not matching,
where there's like an offer sheet and the person doesn't match. The only other time there was an offer sheet was the summer 2022, 23. Yeah, so the first summer that I was following Cap things, where the Dallas Mavericks tendered an offer sheet to Matisse Thybulle and Portland matched and kept him.
Didn't something happen with Ayton too or something? Like
that
he was
going
to go to the Pacers?
Years back where like the Pacers had tendered an offer sheet and the Suns matched.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of ruined the Pacers free agency is what I'm told because like they had to wait all that time and then.
Yeah. Well, it's not worked out horribly for them. I mean, they almost won, but they'll be back next year, hopefully.
Yeah. That's going to be fun. I think the East is more fun when the Pacers are good. Other than that, just like a slew of like 2-year deals here and there. Tobias Harris with the Spurs, Zach Collins with the Bulls, D'Anthony Melton back with Golden State. I think it's interesting that we've got a lot of these 2-year deals because that was not really a thing in past free agencies.
That's an interesting number.
Say that again. Interesting.
It is interesting. 2 years. Yeah. Like LeBron was doing like the 1-year thing every like when he was in Cleveland, it's like 1 year, 1 year. 2 years is I like it in terms of flexibility, but you still have them, and then they can expire. Maybe you could trade him. I don't know.
As far as I can tell, all of these are fully guaranteed. Some of them even have a player option, so it's not like a 1+1 with like a team option situation. It's not a great situation to be, but these are a lot of these are like lower level free agents that maybe they would have gotten 3 years in a past free agency, but more likely they would have been in line for like an MLE and MLE or a minimum, except for Tobias Harris. Like I think he had a great year with he's still in his prime, had a great year with Detroit, and good for the Spurs. Again, they were just like, we need forwards, and they went out and filled that need. Any other notable ones? Mo Wagner to Brooklyn. That's sad for me as a Magic fan.
The brothers are
splitting up the Wagners again. Don't love that. But could that mean that Franz is going to be on the move? I don't know. Something to keep in mind.
Keon Ellis, he walked from Cleveland, right?
Yeah, because he was traded there from Sacramento. Let me just.
People were thinking because he walked from Cleveland that was Cleveland being like, we are making room for LeBron or whatever. Like people were using that as evidence for why Cleveland is still in the front of the.
I actually haven't. I assumed that every team that was in the LeBron, like the serious teams in the LeBron running, were probably going the minimum route, especially because a sign and trade is now off the table since the Lakers renounced his cap hold. let me look at what Cleveland's cap sheet looks like right now. Obviously, the James Harden thing kind of looms over all of this, and they've got a cap hold on them, 47 million. So they don't have cap space, so they would definitely be operating as a if they're going to pay Harden, the most they could give, depending on what they pay Harden, they could probably finagle it to end up giving LeBron like um a MLE, like a mini MLE. So that's around $6.5 million this year, instead of a minimum. But it's also possible they pay Harden enough that that's not an option, and they have to just give him a minimum.
Do the minimum.
Yeah. So I don't think there's like a financial edge with like any team, and it doesn't seem like that's what he's really weighing either. Like, let me look at the Sixers right now. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not in any better position.
And it doesn't seem like LeBron. None of what he said was, he wants money, obviously. So
yeah, nobody says
as
that.
much as I was skeptical about him taking a minimum. I don't know.
Yeah. Now that you're looking at the teams that are available, like he might get a little bit more. Like there are like I think Philly could probably offer like a mini MLE, but yeah, I don't think they could finagle more than that because like they're under the first apron right now, but not by enough to offer a full MLE. So yeah, none of these teams are in, and Miami in particular, like they're hard capped the first apron right now, so they couldn't offer more even if they wanted to. Like try to clear up space. Yeah. So those were kind of the big ones. I already alluded to this, but Mike Conley got signed by, well, he's no longer with the Timberwolves, he's with the Celtics, and Slow-Mo is going to the Raptors because he hates Denver. Or maybe Denver hates him, who knows. So they clear up a bit of the backcourt in Minnesota for Io and LaMelo, but the real adults have exited the Wolves locker room, and I'm very curious to see what that means for their dynamics next season. And obviously, I'm wishing terrible dynamics on the Wolves.
That was like everyone's main point about LaMelo was Mike Conley will be there. He'll coach him up, be the mentor. And already he said, hell no. I'm out of that.
I didn't see people were saying that. That actually would have been a decent selling point on the LaMelo trade if you to skeptics, but now it's like, nope.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Boston is going to have like a smaller point guard. They haven't really had one in a while. Like Peyton Pritchard is like not big, but he's like kind of sturdy. I think it'd be really good for Mitchell Robinson to have a point guard like Mike Conley. I don't think he's had one like that in a while. And it might even help Neemias Queta a bit too, because Boston hasn't had like true point guards in quite some time, which is maybe why they like didn't trust these non-spacing bigs, because they're like, we don't know what to do with these guys. So I actually think the Conley signing is like smart, and he's not gonna play that much. He's just not. But he could be really he could be a very rich like intellectual source for that team, for those players in particular, I think. Okay, so these are the very last ones I'm going to talk about. The Nuggets that never were and may never be. Jonathan Isaac signs back with Orlando on a 1-year deal. I thought he was going to be just on the market after they waived him. But I think they were able to just waive him in time that they could just sign him after like the league calendar year changed. I think that's the mechanics of how that works, because usually you can't waive a player and then re-sign them in the same year. Like there was some like cap gymnastics that the Wolves had to do to be able to do that with Mike Conley in the middle of the season when they traded him at the deadline, to be waived by another team that then traded. And Kenrich Williams returning to OKC, a 1-year $5 million deal. I think that's notable because it's more than the minimum. which is interesting for a team that is over the second apron. They have I think they use his non-bird rights to sign him because it's definitely legal. But I'm just saying, like, every dollar you spend over that first tax apron is like multiple dollars in luxury tax payments, and OKC is paying to keep the band together as much as possible after trading Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe. Like, they are not in cost-cutting mode. They picked up Dort's team option. Isaiah Hartenstein took a slight discount on what he was making last year, but it wasn't by that much. And now they're also keeping Kenrich Williams, a player who didn't play for them all that much. And I don't know how much further up the depth chart he's going to move because of these other new additions that they had, even with Wiggins and Isaiah Joe out. So I think that was notable. Last never nugget is Chris Middleton got signed and traded to Washington. Yeah. They want him back. They're like, hey, we're the Wizards and we're trying to win now. And we liked how Middleton was actually a winning player here. And we liked his veteran presence in our locker room and culture and all of that stuff.
That one definitely crushed Nuggets fans.
Yeah. I mean, it was you weren't going to be able to get him because Washington was willing to pay him more than the minimum. Right. And all the guys we're talking about for the most part are more than the minimum signings. Which is why the ones that hurt were Jonathan Isaac back to Orlando. But it's okay. It's that's the team. You want to stay there, fine. But Slow-mo going all the way to Toronto. I don't know if Denver was actually interested in him, but I feel like they should have been. I feel like there were rumors that they were interested in him at the trade deadline as a buyout candidate.
I don't remember.
They didn't get him.
Yeah,
buyout he went candidate. Back to. Maybe it was just me projecting. I can't remember if there were actual rumors or if it was just me wanting him. But look, if you're angling for LeBron, Slow-mo doesn't make a lot of sense. But I'm kind of whatever. He might be an interesting buyout candidate this trade deadline too. Who knows? Because he's just making a minimum, so Denver would be able to sign that. That's it for the big moves and trends of free agency. Dahlia says he's only there because of Kawhi. Well, Kawhi is not there right now, and it'll be interesting to see if he ends up there. Yeah, those are the big things, and I didn't think we'd get through every transaction, but we got through 95% of them.
Yeah, we're all caught up.
Yeah,
it took many weeks of free agency to develop. It has really been active, slowish for the Nuggets. People want big change on the Nuggets that didn't come, but the NBA is pretty shaken up. Giannis on a new team. Kawhi was, and now I don't know where that's going, but yeah, free agents are going around. The big teams that are still the contenders still are the same, besides losing some rotation players, of course. But the Nuggets are going to be one of the most consistent teams that have remained the same for the longest, now that Jaylen Brown's not on the Celtics and things of that nature. LeBron leaving the Lakers, etc. Ja on Portland.
Out of
so
Portland.
Weird. That last time, so weird.
You already said LaMelo, right?
Yeah, LaMelo on the Wolves.
Yeah,
it's just crazy.
Jaylen Brown.
And the Warriors, I guess the Warriors aren't really doing anything either.
Well, they might be trying to get AD. Apparently, AD is seeking a big fat extension from the Wizards that I don't know that they're going to give him, but I also don't think that they have to give it to him right now. They did pay Trey to keep him happy, so who knows what they'll do with AD. I think that would be a mistake.
If Dallas didn't trade AD, they could have been in the LeBron sweepstakes. Probably would have got him because Kyrie's there and AD. But they traded him before he said he wasn't going to be there. So yeah, Toronto, if they get Kawhi, they would be a fun team for sure.
Yeah, Toronto's going to be interesting next year for sure if they can get that done. Not just because they would get Kawhi, but because BI would be not there anymore.
Yeah, because
Batum, yes. My only thing is we've got so many forwards. I would love a consolidation trade. If you're going to trade Cam Johnson to get other players, throw in one of these largely unplayable forwards. Or they might not be unplayable, but they're unplayable for us. Right? It doesn't even necessarily have to be Zeke, although that's preferable. But we just have like too many.
Zeke is playable for so many teams. Trust me.
Yes.
NBA execs.
All right. Well, if you guys have made it this far, you are like so real ones with like incredible mental and emotional stamina. And we really appreciate you. If you like our content, please remember to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, as well as the notification bell. Leave us a review on your favorite podcast platforms and follow us on socials. Links are in the description. Always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.